Hi, I'm Jennifer Branch. Today I'm going to be painting some grapevines in Italy. Happy painting!
There's something so romantic about vineyards and painting vineyards where you set up your easel in the middle of it and it's just gorgeous. This isn't actually on a vineyard, it's a old house and in Italy, and it's the arbor supporting these beautiful grapevines. I like the time of year where they're green to deep purple. So I have all the colors to play with. I do my usual, a little bit of yellow all around. I'm using cad yellow this time because I wanted to have a really gold glow, kind of an orangey glow instead of the more neutral azo yellow. Then I float in some green, and now I start really playing. The burgundies of the grapes are perfect with the maroon perylene. That hits it. You can see the colors on the grapes. It ranges beautifully. I have greens, I have some deep purples. I'm going to have a very limited palette actually for this, but it's a wonderful palette. So just have some fun with it. Splatter. This, I don't have masking down. It doesn't matter. If you're using a good quality paper, if you need to pull out whites, you can. If you need to use gouache, use white gouache. I don't use white gouache in this one, but if it takes a little bit of that to let you really just let yourself go and throw paint everywhere and have it all over the painting and just have a very active, exciting painting, well, then use some white gouache. Just let your brush strokes flow with the shapes that you're painting. Always look at what you're painting, really look at it, and move with those. A little bit of ultramarine pink here, just some bright purples, very, very bright purple. That just goes beautifully with the maroon perylene. So you can pull things out anytime. A good quality paper lets you do that. It won't be crisp white, but I don't think that grapes really need the crisp white quite as much as some things that I might paint. They're kind of softer and a little bit frosted, and you do have a little bit of crispness, but if you lose a little bit, that's okay too. So I'm just moving around the painting, working with the shapes of the objects. I'm letting everything flow, I'm splattering, I'm having some fun. After all, it's a grapevine painting. It's supposed to be beautiful and fun and lush, rich colors. I've let it dry, and you can see how much the colors dull down when it dries. So keep that in mind when you're painting. You want to paint really bright and really dark, and you're going to get half of what you just painted. Now I'm leaving it open here. It's a little bit too strong, so I'm flowing into it a little bit and seeing if that does the trick. Is that going to be enough, or am I going to want to go over it? I'm using some Quin red, and just doing a couple of the shapes. There's going to be a little bit of detail in that. It's not like a house or something, but you want some grape shapes in a grapevine painting, right? So I'm trying to reserve the highlights on the grapes as much as possible. But I'm letting the colors flow in the shadows from one area to the next, and that really is the trick of having a beautiful loose painting. The center grapevines, of course, is where the most detail is, and so I'm the most careful there. The rest of it, oh well. It should all flow together. Have a couple little highlights. So just keep moving. Take a little bit more time in your center of focus. Take a little less time when it's not your center of focus. A little bit of azo yellow just dripped in nicely. And see how all the shadows are flowing together beautifully. You just want those shadows to move and shimmer in the light, and all the colors of these, the multicolored grapes, they're all combining in the shadows, and you don't really have a defined edges. Pull some green in, that's part of the trick, because these grapes aren't quite ripe. So you've got a little bit of green. Just pulling in some darks now and letting it flow. See how just a couple little touches, it really doesn't take much, and it starts to look like grapes. It's another blurring the edges of the iron bar because it's a little harsh there, but it's also pretty interesting because it's obviously an ancient iron trellis. A little bit more green. Let that flow in. And this is my phthalo green, azo yellow combination that I use so much. Phthalo green is the only color that I rarely use straight. Most other colors I mix it on the painting. And phthalo green, I like to dull it down a little bit. It's a little bit in your face. Always keep an eye on what you're painting. And splatter with color and with clean water. I emphasize clean water. I want a little bit of action in there. Have some fun. Now it's dried, and you can see how the color is lighter again. You think that you've put down these extreme darks, and they're just not nearly dark or bright enough. But you need to build it up in layers, otherwise it deadens the color. It doesn't have that very alive feeling. There's a beautiful bright gold leaf there that I'd like to try to reserve a little bit. Drop in a little quin gold. So the next step here is to add some very strong darks. Around here, I need to fix my composition a little by balancing it and work on the leaves. So I've got strong darks behind the grapes, and that really makes them pop a lot, doesn't it? Really emphasizes them. The iron pole over there, it's a little harsh, but it's flowing with the grapes right there. So I'm negative painting, and negative painting, it's just painting. It's part of painting. You trace around the object that you're painting instead of painting the object. But really, it's exactly the same thing. You're just painting the background instead of the object that's your subject. And just integrate the two, because if you outline everything, it's not going to look good. If you don't have a background on anything, it's not going to look good. So it's really something that you just integrate into your painting. Practice, play around with it. It'll come naturally. Not a big deal. That gold leaf. But see how the leaves especially benefit from the lost and found edges and everything flowing around and through the object. because if I did little cutouts of everything, that wouldn't be any good either. So everything has to flow. Watercolor, it's a fluid medium. It's about the painting flowing together and the objects sort of carving, appearing out of the background. I just can't get over the color of these grapes. So you can see the paint's just moving and flowing through. I'm going to want some very strong darks here, but sometimes even when you want strong darks, you start with a few lights, and that way it still gives you glimmers in the darkness. Ultramarine blue is a very good, cool blue. It will push things back very quickly, but also if you put it on too heavy the first time, it can turn very opaque. So to keep the translucency of the grapes, I really need to do multiple layers. This painting is very much about multiple layers. It took me about 2 hours to paint, and just because I had to pause for drying and all of that. So you don't see everything that happens in the 2 hours, but there's 2 hours of just going over this, letting it dry. Something that's very transparent and very translucent and has that light feeling. It needs multiple layers. That's how you do it. If you try to do it all in one, it's going to look very harsh. The light's not going to work the same way. So big, strong darks. And trust me, it's going to get even darker. Remember how that'll be half as dark when it dries. Have some of the green flowing around. Oh, I started out with my squirrel brush because I wanted very loose strokes, and squirrel kind of glides on the surface of the paper. And then I switched to the Isabey Sable brush when I wanted more detail. It's much better for covering an area and good point, so I can have those little details around the negative painting around the grapes. But squirrel is what you need for gliding over the surface. Hit and miss, interesting effects. Now this is tricky, that the ultramarine can turn muddy very quickly, so you need to be bold enough so that you're not using very weak color, which that won't work. But you don't want to hit it too want to hit it too many times. But too weak would not work, but too strong would be kind of yucky looking, for a technical term. The little drips of the phthalo green, especially, it's a phthalo green azo yellow mix, and I'm just dropping that in. And if you hit it too many times, if you're scrubbing it around and trying to get that perfect grape shape and you're attacking it, it's not going to work. It's not going to give that, ooh, there's still a little bloom of green on the side of the grape, or there's something in there and I can't quite define it. It would just look harsh. I tend to take a lot longer with flower paintings, and really grapes, flowers, very similar, because I do like building up the multiple layers. Something like a landscape is, okay, this is dried. So you can see that ultramarine blue that was just almost black, it was so dark, has dried too. It's a nice blue. Could do with some darkening. The iron definitely just, it's pulling your eye right out of the painting. And that was always a concern. That's why the grapevines, I know they're in the photo, but that's why I emphasized the grapevines cutting it across and breaking it up, but it just wasn't doing it. So it needs another leaf to pull it to break it up a little bit more. Keep your eye from falling right out of the painting. You have to direct your viewer's eye. And likely with a good quality paper, you can do that. You can make all sorts of changes that you wouldn't believe possible. Watercolor is a very easy to work with medium. You have all kinds of room to correct mistakes. And don't worry, I'll do a video on correcting mistakes and working with your painting on that at some point soon. I want the base down here to be dark. I want to leave diagonal, just darken it a little bit on the upper left and the bottom right. Not too much. It's still the biggest dark in the paintings at the center of interest. That's where I want the most contrast, and I don't want to get rid of all the whites because that makes it sparkle, with the reflections. So I don't want the shadows like is in the photograph reference photo that's up there. Okay, here's some strong dark. So you can see where I'm now starting to have the suggestion of grapes over that pole, maybe hanging around it, and some more darks. So I've broken up that line a little bit. And now I'm just going to pull out the grapes in the center of interest. I told you that'd have to get a lot darker. It's still mostly ultramarine blue. It's just blurring together with everything around it. And that is why watercolor is so spontaneous. You can blur things together, move things around. You never quite know where the painting's going to take you. I'm a firm believer in knowing your composition and doing value studies and having a good idea of that part of where the painting's taking you, but details leave up to the paint. See, it just takes a couple of the leaf veins and things to suggest leaf veins. You don't need to draw every single one. It's not a photograph. We're not reproducing this exactly. We're giving the feeling of a beautiful grapevine. Quin red makes that the grapevines kind of glow a little bit, and see how that needs to be on top of the darker layer. And you wouldn't think it'd make that much difference, but the order that you put in paints down really does make a difference. I urge everyone to just scribble some with their paints. Let some dry, see what it looks like when you put yellow on top of blue or blue on top of yellow, or in this case, Quin red on top of ultramarine blue and maroon perylene. just refining a couple of the shapes. I want the glowing color. It doesn't take a lot of, you don't have to draw out every single one. Just a couple of, hey, here's a grape, here's a grape, here's a grape. Whoa, gosh, the whole thing must be a grapevine. Don't forget you can pull out with the rag. That's one of the great benefits about using cotton rags to paint with. Finger paints are always, welcome. So stronger and stronger darks. Quite a few layers on that by now. But leaving little holes so you can see the previous layers. Not trying to outline the entire thing, just, hey, it gets deep and dark in these shadows here, but there's still some glimmers. Now it's dried a bit, and I'm on the final wash. That's make or break it. One more thing can often ruin an entire painting. I want a little bit more contrast at the center of interest there, just so that they pop a little bit. And remember, it's a cone shape. It's upside down cones, so keep it rounded. Sign my name and it's all done. Here's what it looks like after it dries. Changes a lot, doesn't it? I love the browny reds of that maroon perylene. For more information, please visit my website at paintingwatercolor.com. And I have lots of other demonstrations. Happy painting!